I'm actually beginning to see a change in the language that many of the brand people are using today, which is a language that Tatas have used for 100 years. And I have definitely been talking about what Tatas have been doing for 100 years for the last maybe 5 or 6 years. And I'm beginning to see the language of brand and in summits and seminars slowly getting changed. And I'm seeing it visibly. And therefore there is actually no need for me to say anything more on what Tatas are doing or Tata Steel is doing, because I feel that that India and the world is slowly catching on. It's not only happening in Bombay or New Delhi or Bangalore. It is also happening in New York, because I recently was in a Global Compact Summit. Global Compact is an organization which was founded by Mr. Kofi Annan, the current Director General of the United Nations. And the Global Compact is an organization of industrial organizations of the world. And there were originally 12 founder members, of which there was one from India, which is Tata Steel. And this idea of this Global Compact is to get corporates think in terms of a triple bottom line, which is environmental, social, and financial. And they said that all these corporations put up these financial reports which has got some red and green marks, and there is a bottom line and things like that. But there are more important bottom lines of industrial corporations, and therefore people need to pay attention. And that is this Global Compact seminar. And this Global Compact annual session was held in the UN General Assembly, and Mr. Kofi Annan addressed now the Global Compact from about 12, which was in 1998 or 99, it has now grown to some 3,000. And there are several people who have written to me after that seminar was over, and I got a letter just a couple of days back which is from somebody in Sweden, which said that, dear Mr. Muthuraman, I heard you speak at the Global Compact, and I now realize, and I went through your website and I've got all your publications, I now realize that this Global Compact did not start in New York. It actually started in Jamshedpur 100 years back. That is exactly the letter that I got just about a week ago. Anyway, I'm happy to be here at this brand summit, and I know that there is a lot of hype and noise on branding these days. Recently, just about 2 weeks ago, we had a brand summit in Jamshedpur. About a couple of months ago, we had a brand conclave in Calcutta, where Noel Kapferer was there, the current international brand guru. And I know there's a lot of discussions are going on. So while I am happy to be here, I am also conscious of the fact that some of you may be wondering as to why is the steel guy, steel and brand don't seem to have any relationship with each other and totally unrelated topics. Why is it that this guy is coming and talking about brand? I take a view that, commodity is really a mindset. Somebody said steel is a commodity and so on, and lots of people say it, and sometimes people who are quite close to me also say it, and which I don't like it. And, I take a view that there is nothing like a commodity. Commodity is really a mindset. Because everything is differentiable. Each one of you in this hall is a person different from the other. There is nobody who's exactly like the other person. Every single product in the world, every single breakfast that you can have in every single hotel in this country or anywhere in the world is different. An omelette is different from one place to the other place, even though the origin is the same. So every single thing in the world is differentiable. And we have a mindset of something not being able to differentiate. And talking of steel, I can tell you there are something like more than 20,000 varieties of steel in the world, a little more than the number of cars that are in the world. Number of varieties of cars in the world, or number of varieties of toothpaste and so on and so forth, or the number of qualities of rice any of those which get branded these days, I can tell you that the number of steel varieties are far, far more in number and differentiable than any of these. And just steel happens to be a little more useful to improving the quality of life of the human civilization than many, many things which get branded these days. So I think steel has a place in a seminar on branding, and I am happy to see that steel and branding is getting related in the minds of people, and in the minds of the current people who have not always related these two. I want to start off saying that in terms of branding is something which is not new. The word is new. And we have always had this branding for number of years, for decades and centuries and for millions of years. And it is as old as a human civilization. After all, when two people started conversing with each other 7 centuries ago, when you start talking to somebody else, what are you trying to communicate? You're trying to communicate what you are. Where did you come from? What are your values? What are your traits? What do you stand for? That's what you're trying to communicate. In other words, you're trying to represent yourself. You're trying to represent your brand. And the same thing is true of products and services. What is the product made of? What's the raw material used? How is it going to be useful? How is it different from something else that you are already using? That's exactly what we are trying to communicate. And to my mind, branding is as simple as that and as old as that. But then life is not always simple, and human beings as we are and complex people, we cannot also live life as simple as what it can be. So we make things complicated. And there are also millions of producers and there are billions of customers. And there is a lot of noise in the market. And you have to get above the threshold, to be seen and heard in that tremendous amount of noise that's happening in the world. And therefore, we have now started talking about perceptions. Perceptions being reality. We often use the word. After all, perception is reality. Really, what we should be saying is that we need to know the reality. Quite different from perceptions. That's what we should be saying. But since we don't have the time to understand reality, we don't have the time and the patience to look at reality, we often sort of hide behind the statement that perception is reality. Perception is not reality. There is in fact a thick wall between perception and reality, and often the job of the brand gurus and the people who have created brands is often to make that wall thicker. That's also called branding. And there are, of course, some efforts to make that wall thinner. We know which of those people who have tried to do that over the years. So branding is something where you need to reach reality and communicate what you are. And one fundamental aspect of branding, or in that communication, is what I would call as an alignment. If you don't communicate, you need to communicate what you are. If you communicate what you are not, that's not going to be sustainable. In life, in personal lives, as well as in the life of product and services, and as well as in the life of companies. And for a long time, branding has been seen as a tool to hide what you are and communicate what you are not. And that has actually been what is happening in the world, and people have been spending a lot of money and a lot of time of people in trying to communicate what you are not. And it is just like in life, if you are going to communicate what you are not, you will not be sustainable. You will succeed for some time, for some months and some years, and it is not going to last long. Which is why many brands don't last long. Which is why many companies don't last long. Which is why only few companies live for 100 years and more. And this to my mind is a fundamental truth about this brand communication. That you must understand that the purpose of branding is to communicate what you are and not use that tool to communicate something different from what you are. And alignment is a fundamental prerequisite of a good brand communication. The other issue is how do you build brands? There are people who build product brands. There are people who build service brands. And people spend enormous amount of money in building these brands. Billions of dollars, as Chadda was saying. Billions of dollars, crores of rupees. We put names of companies or products in the cricket bats of people and lots of in the caps of cricketers and all kinds of things we do. And you spend enormous amount of money. But all these are not greatly sustainable if it is not backed up by something else. So people have built product brands, people have built service brands, but how about building brands on philosophy? How about building brands on philosophy? That's what I want to give you an example. I know it has been talked about it and I know Chadda has mentioned it, but I am a firm believer in building brands on philosophy. Take the case of Tata's and Tata Steel, for example. The moment you utter the word Tata, it evokes in everybody, a sense of trust, integrity, corporate social responsibility, ethical standards, quality of management, ethical practices, many, many things. And this has been built over 100 years, more than 100 years. And a lot of hard work, a lot of perseverance. And against all pressures, never giving up on values. And it is not easy. Building brands out of products is not difficult. You only need money. Building brands out of services is also not difficult. You just throw away money to a few advertising people and they will show few movies on the TV and all that, and you will succeed for some time. But building brands on a philosophy is very difficult. Because over a period of time, that philosophy will be tested very severely. That organization will be under tremendous amount of pressure. And you need an unwavering resolve to succeed, which is really what the Tatas, have done. And what Tatas have done in terms of building this brand called Tata, based on trust, based on what they have done to society, is something which is lasted for 100 years, and that's the only reason why it has lasted for 100 years. If Tata was a product brand or Tata was a service brand, it would not have lasted. But Tata is a brand based on certain fundamental value systems and a certain fundamental vision and a certain fundamental way of working and way of living. That is why that brand has stood for a long, long time. And Tata Steel does spend, something like 5 to 10% of its profit on society. And it spends equal amount of money on, other causes, other social causes. And I often tell my colleagues that if Tata Steel's products and services enjoy a certain position in the marketplace, it is far more because of the fact that Tata Steel enjoys a reputation of corporate social responsibility and ethical practices, and we are a member of the Corporate Global Compact, and we have done so much, and people remember in villages and rural areas. And a very, very small amount is only due to the amount of money that we spend on, on the TV advertisements and things like that, or product brandings and so on. While I know one of my colleagues is going to speak in the afternoon, and he's going to talk to you about brands that we have created, and we have succeeded in creating a brand. And it is important in today's context, and there is no doubt about it. Because if you've got a noise in the world, and if you've got a certain, shall we say, mental maturity in the marketplace, which will understand only certain things and which will not understand certain other things which ought to be really understood, then you need to descend down to that kind of marketplace. In my mind, that is exactly what we have done by creating brands. But the brand that we created over the last 100 years, in terms of corporate social responsibility and so on, is really the brand that will survive for long. And anything else that we may do will just an add-on to just please the if I may use a very crude word, IQ levels of the marketplace, and really nothing more. So I just want to leave you with three key messages. Message number one is that there is nothing like a commodity. Everything is differentiable. But you must have a solid content to differentiate. That's one message. The second message is one of alignment. There must be an alignment, and you must always strive for alignment. You won't have that at all times, but you must always strive for alignment between what you are and what you are trying to communicate to the world. And market and this branding, through which lots of people have made lots of money and have wasted lots of people's time, is not really to be used as a trickery and of a marketing tool in the marketplace. I think human civilization ought to have a better IQ than that. And the third, and to my mind the most important message, is that build brands on the basis of a philosophy, and not merely on the basis of products and services. And building brands on the basis of philosophy is very, very, very tough. And it actually costs a great deal of more money. But the money is not going to a Sachin Tendulkar or a Saurav Ganguly who have already got a lot of money. The money is going to these poor villages who don't have money and whose lot we need to uplift. That's why the money is spent. So my third message is build brands on the basis of a philosophy. So there are the three messages, and I know you're going to hear a lot of thing about branding and the hype and so on. But I do believe that the world of branding, or the world of the gurus of branding, is also taking a full circle. And my management friends and the gurus that I have in the company on branding, they tell me that the modern word for this, turning around the full circle, is what is called the third wave of branding, or some cost-related branding and so on, cost-related marketing. And the cost being what is behind the brand. And what is behind the brand is the one that you ought to see. Thank you very much.